Hello everyone and welcome to another Deck Tech by yours truly. Today we are talking about Joker. Joker is the main character from Persona 5 and he is our protagonist. So if you've never played a Joker deck before, I'm just kidding you. I wanted a chance to show off my new sleeves. Aren't these cool? Yeah. Anyway, so for reals what we're actually talking about is a prison deck tech. And that is based around our brand new multi-element legend from Opus XIII, and that is Celestia. So, Celestia is quite powerful, and from the moment I read the card, I was like, oh man, you've got to build a water-ice build around that, because what she does is that she makes it so that no water character on your field, and that includes backups, they can't be broken outright by summons or abilities that don't deal damage. And then if an ice character is chosen, you get to get a little revenge effect. You get to respond by dull freezing any character on your opponent's board, which is really, really cool. So the idea of this kind of prison came up of like, wow, so what if you could just lock your opponent out of doing anything? So here's how we're going to do it. And she is, of course, backed up by my card I was probably the most interested in for this opus, and this was this brand new Sid Randall. If you've been playing this game at all, you know that enter the field effects are so prominent and running wild and running rampant. Finally, we've got a guy who says, no, that all shuts down. So as long as your Sid Randall is on the field, any forward your opponent puts on the field that has an auto ability on entry, like it says when it enters the field, it won't go off. And it won't trigger other ones too. So for example, you've got that new Cagnazzo card that says anytime a forward enters, it puts a counter on him. If Sid Randall's on the field, it shuts that off as well. So it's the forward itself entering and any other forwards that enter. Now you have to be a little careful because that doesn't shut off backups. So backups like Irvine or Vivi or Blaze completely can still get Sid Randall as well as any summons. And then of course they're vulnerable to attacks that are on the auto abilities on attack triggers, such as, White Tiger Sea Nimbus, Braska's Final Aeon, etc. But nonetheless, being able to shut that stuff down is great. So how do we lock our opponent in our prison? Well, probably my favorite card from the set, we are running 3 copies of the brand new Charlotte. Charlotte is exactly what I want in a magnet card. There was a Cecil in Opus I that cost 5 CP, and he had the exact same text as her, although not as much. And he basically said, summons or abilities of your opponent must target Cecil if possible. And while I ran that card a few times, it usually just felt like a big CP dump. But Charlotte is so cheap at 2 CP that you're basically paying 2 CP to say, hey, I'm going to make you burn through something in order to, protect it. Once Charlotte's on the field, they've got to target her if they're able to. And then at damage 3, she gets 2,000 power, and any damage she takes gets reduced by 2,000, so she just becomes that much tankier. And what's great about cards like this, too, is that it can not only prevent negative effects from happening to the rest of your board, it can steal your opponent's positive effects. So, for example, the summon Belias says, choose one forward, give it haste, first strike, 1,000 power to the end of the turn. They have to give that to Charlotte, because it just says choose a forward, so she fits. The Tyro bump at damage 5, where he can dull himself and then give a forward 2,000 power, they've got to give that to Charlotte, because it just says choose one forward. So not only does she help protect your board, the way she can absorb beneficial effects from your opponent is so, so nice. I love this card. She's just she's exactly something Ice needed. So, we will continue our prison with 3 copies of Legend 2 Opus Cecil. It makes me so happy to use this card again because he's such a cool card, but I just wasn't sure if he could ever see the light of day again. So if you don't know what this card does, his downside is that he has to block. If possible, Cecil must block. And that was usually his biggest detriment. Now, what he brings is that when he's on the field, he buffs every other forward besides himself by 1,000 power. And more importantly, every other forward and himself on your side of the field, they can receive no damage from summons or abilities. So if Cecil's on the field and Celestia is on the field, nothing can be broken outright. That's a water character. And then Cecil says, and none of them will take summon or ability damage. So it just really locks your opponent into this position of like, well, shoot, what do I do? And the answer? Oh, absolutely nothing. So to round out our prison, we've got Cecil's best gal, Rosa, our Opus 9 legend. When Rosa's on the field, she says, if summons the forwards you control take 1,000 less damage from any source, which is really nice with Cecil, since if he's forced to block, and let's say they swing in with a 9K, you don't want to just have to block 9K Cecil, and now they trade. Rose is going to say, nope, he's going to take 1,000 less, so he'll survive for things that normally would get him for that. So these are the 5 main cards of our prison. Once this is out, it becomes incredibly difficult for your opponent to do anything. Any entry effects they have are completely shut off by Sid Rendell. If Charlotte's on the field, if they want to choose, like they want to get rid of the Cecil or the Celestia, they've got to target Charlotte, which is fantastic. They can't outright break anything, so cards like Diabolos or Odins are completely useless minus the ice guys. But again, even if they're forced to use an Odin on Charlotte, then you get to respond with the Celestia ping, dull freeze something, which is awesome. And then, yeah, even if they somehow turn off damage, it's so great. The only things that can really mess up the prison is the card Kuchaspu, which is a fire backup, which can turn off reduction, so it will shut off Cecil and Rosa. And then a massive board removal like Shantoto. But like Philia, that's not going to work. Fiend of Alifor, that's not going to work. So when you play it, you get into this prison and you can just see how you lock people down. It's fantastic. So how do we make the prison even stronger? Well, 2 copies of my good man Waka. Waka will increase the power of any water forwards by 1,000, which is really relevant for these 3. It means Cecil and Celestia both go to 10k or 2 Cs, and then Rosa goes to 8k on her own as well, which is really nice. We have 1 copy of Minwu. Just gives us that extra if they do turn stuff off, or if Cecil gets defeated somehow, he can just block permanently, which is the other thing, because that's the only way he's going to die, basically, is that he'll die to having to block too many forwards, but Minwu's going to just keep making that damage fall off. Fantastic. 2 copies of Harley, and 3 copies of the best ice backup in the game, and that is Edward. This is, again, another form of protection, because Sid Randell's biggest weakness is summons. Well, you hold on to those Edward specials, and then when they go for that big summon play, boop, Silent Burst, just completely shut it off. Fantastic. Harley's just a cheap ice backup, but then she gets Edward down for 1 CP, which is fantastic. And then we have Ash from Opus XIII. And the reason I thought of this card is it kind of fit in with, it's kind of the title of the deck is Ash's Prison, but so Ash is another one. If they choose her, so normally she has her backup Rossler to help her from being broken, but now Celestia covers that, so we don't even need Rossler in here. And then anytime they choose Ash, she's going to gain 3,000 power. So even if something like a Braskas were to target her, if you've got Walk out, she's going to gain 3,000, and then she's just going to be boosted. And again, if they don't have anything that can get through this Cecil effect, like Braskas or Kuchaspel, if they target Ash for anything, she's just going to get stronger and stronger, and she's probably not going to die because she has all this protection. Then she can activate herself anytime she needs to as well. She's got a really nice special. She's been really fun to use in this deck. 2 copies of the brand new Chime. Great water ice forward. What's really nice about these water ice forwards is that they get both of Celestia's effects. So they get the protection if they can't be broken outright, and then if they're chosen, they're also ice, so you get to respond with Celestia's revenge trigger. Now, Chime's a little weird because your opponent has to have 2 forwards or more. So you can't use her on a board where they only have 1 forward, but if they only have 1 forward and you're getting the prison out, then you're in good times anyway. So usually I'll hold Chime in hand, and then the second they'll get 2 forwards out, I'll just drop it. And then what's really nice, so she'll dull freeze 1 and then bounce the other one back to your opponent's hand. But if you've got Sid Randall on the field, you're more than happy to bounce back something with a great entry effect, because guess what? It's not going to go off. And then dull freeze something that maybe has an on-attack trigger or is going to do something every single turn. 1 copy of Garland 9. This card is just fun. So the thing about this card is you really, really want to see it early if you're going to use it. The later you see him in the game, the less powerful he becomes. So at the start of your opponent's main phase, they're going to have to dull any active character. He's also defeated, or he's kind of made pointless if they have like a monster that's just sitting there. They can dull that every turn. As the game gets later, they have enough resources. He doesn't really drain the resources you want. So if you don't see him early, just pitch him for CP. 1 copy of the new Ultimecia. It fills both our conditions, so it gets both the Celestia's protection. The simple version is you can just discard a card from their hand. The other version is that you can bounce a character back to your hand. There aren't many really forwards you want to do this on, maybe with the exception of Chime, because she's the only forward, I think, in this deck that actually has an on-entry ability, so replaying Chime. But you can also use it to clear backups. And so if you want to, I've used it to bounce Edward before and replay Edward to make them discard a card again. So you can be creative with it if you need to. Otherwise, it's just a body that gets double protection and makes them discard at its worst. 2 copies of Brand New Remedy. Remedy absolutely wants to be with Sid Randall. She will, as long as she's on the field, Sid Randall gains 2,000 power, which is fantastic. So if you've got Sid Randall and Remedy and Cecil, boom, he's a 9K. That's awesome. And then she has another ability that anytime your opponent searches for a card, they must discard a card. And then if your opponent ever discards a card due to your summons or abilities, you get to fetch out a copy of Sid Randall. I'll be honest, I only find that so effective because there's only 3 Sid Randall in the deck, so it's great if you haven't found them yet and you can get them out early that way, but otherwise if you've like already drawn them, it's not doing much. But it is kind of nice to mitigate that anytime they search, they just instantly have to throw it away so they're not getting advantage. Finally, the last of our forwards, our good old EX Burst Buddy Porum. Fits in with the somewhat 4 thing we have, but it's just a great little body. EX Burst gets you back any summon, and great chump blocker. And then again, can't be broken outright, so they're going to have to use something to do, which it's really funny how resilient Porum can become if you've got the prison in place. So what summons do we run? 2 copies of Glacial Atlas. Favorite ice summon, has a lot of different modes, it's just very versatile. Very important is 2 copies of Leviathan. Leviathan will choose a forward, and the next damage it is dealt is reduced by 5,000. So again, if your Cecil is ever forced to block, or you're running him in and they try to trade him out because they really want to get Cecil off the board, you can cast the Leviathan, make it so that Cecil's going to survive, and then their forward's not, and it draws you a card on top of that. So that is great. 2 copies of Cuchulainn the Impure. Another EX Burst draw card. Both of these are EX Burst draw cards, which is really nice. We really appreciate that. And then he can blink something's ability. So if they have a White Tiger Lassie Kunmi, or White Tiger Lassie, or a Braska's, or Neo X Death, or maybe something that doesn't hurt you when you choose it, but, you know, whatever, a Zidane, or something that when it goes to the break zone is going to do something and you can blank it on its way out. Fantastic, really good against Sophie. And if you ever need it in a pinch, you can actually use it on your very own Cecil to make it so he does not have to block. So if he was going to be forced to block and die, you can use it to blank him. He no longer has to block. Just be careful if you do that, because once you do that, you also shut off his ability to buff and protect everybody else. And then finally, 2 copy of the 1-cost Zelira. I like this card a lot. Again, it's cheap. If you noticed, our most expensive summon here is Glacia. So just really cheap summons, just break a dull forward. That's a prime number. Feels really good. Sorry about the glare there. And rounding out our backup line, we've got 3 copies of the new Sarah. If you haven't used this card yet, it's just fantastic. We'll grab you any job, prince, princess, or king. And in this deck, that is 1 copy of Princess Sarah. Usually this is our primary target. At least so far in all the games I've played, it's always been the target because I've never drawn it naturally. But on the offhand chance that you were to, because you want to get this, you just tap it immediately. You can put it on whatever element you want. I will usually put it on water. Sometimes I will turn her into ice if I am starving for ice backups. Like let's say I've already got Sarah Waka Minwu down. I really want to have at least 2 ice backups, so I will turn her ice. Otherwise, if I get my druthers, I'll turn her into water, because being able to tap her, turn Cecil into an 11k, you know, Celestia into 11k, buff any of your water guys. That's really nice. And then Sarah can also search Mute if you really need it, and then Mute will go out and go ahead and get you a copy of Sid Randall or Remedy. 1 copy of Artemisian, cheap water backup. You're happy to see it early, helps you sculpt your hand, mulligan. And last and certainly not least, 1 copy of Ice. Really good ice backup CP. You can use it to tutor into, most people use it for a backup, but hey, let's say it's later and you really need a forward or a summon, you can use it for that as well. So here we go. Here's the prison. It's really, really fun. Yeah, it can feel a little slow, but not too slow. So you really just kind of have to play it. Getting out Celestia early is really nice, because usually, even if they have a way to get rid of her, and they're going to have to get rid of her with damage-based abilities, you know, the no break is going to be there. So getting out Celestia and Sid Randall usually will stall your opponent, unless they just happen to be running some kind of perfect deck that completely, you know, turns everything off or somehow avoids all the effects, which I haven't run into yet. They can stall the game as you start to get the prison out, and then you just start slamming into people, and what are they going to do about it? one option you could consider is this version of Remedy. So the key part of Remedy is giving Sid Randall the 2,000 power boost. But he gets that regardless of which version of Remedy is on the field. He just needs the card name Remedy. And then this one will also be boosted by 1,000 if you control Sid Randall. So she'll be an 8K. And then she has the effect that if a character of your opponent enters the field other than from their hand, and they have to immediately pay 2 CP of any color, and it breaks. That's really good against things like Kadaj, or in Sophie decks, Elena targets Sophie, Sarah Mobius, if Lena's bringing back a Purim. So anytime they're having a forward enter the field from the break zone, from the deck, from, removed from game like Kadaj, this just puts an immediate tax on them, which is really good. So it's really which one you prefer. I'll be honest, I don't personally find one overwhelmingly great over the other. I've tried both. I've kind of gone back and forth. I'm not going to make a case for one over the other than that I like them both and just do whatever fits your playstyle. So yeah, that is our Prison. It feels really fun to lock our opponent down, and it's definitely a bit of a grind to your deck. You probably won't like this if you're an aggro player, but if you're willing to take your time, I found it to be very satisfying to just watch people and be like, oh my god, and they're just like, they can't do anything. What are they going to do? They've got to target Charlotte, can't break these people outright. Damage is meaningless. Damage just gets reduced all over the board or is completely negated. It's awesome. So, lock your opponents up and throw away the key. Bye!